This episode is sponsored by The Path, the coach-guided membership designed to help you make alcohol small and irrelevant in your life by removing your true desire to grab that next drink. Our science-based, compassion-led program allows you not only to shift your behavior and your relationship around alcohol, but more importantly, uncover and reprogram your subconscious conditioning and neural connections that have been keeping you stuck for years. With daily live breakthrough coaching, an intimate and supportive community, regular peer-to-peer connection calls, and a complete vault of resources, this is where your path to total freedom and effortless enjoyment of your new way of life begins. Join us at nakedmindpath.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. And I am here with Susan. Welcome, Susan.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you. So why don't you take us sort of back to the beginning in your relationship with alcohol? Where did it all start for you?
The first time I drank, I was in 8th grade and I was at a sleepover at my friend's house, and we drank Bacardi and orange juice, something with orange juice, either tequila or Bacardi. And we were downstairs. Her mother was upstairs. And we were downstairs and just kind of we were like walking the drunk driving line, like going, look, like we never drank before. We're like, I don't feel anything. Do you feel anything? Look, I can still do this. And then of course, 15 minutes later, we couldn't even get up the stairs. And then I threw up all night. She laughed and cleaned up after me, and I threw up all night. And it's kind of cool because this particular friend and I reconnected, and she actually just did, my alcohol-free boot camp this past fall. So it was really neat that we were able to reconnect.
Oh, that's so cool. What full circle moment.
Yeah. But I didn't really drink in high school. I was in theater. I did all the musicals and plays. And I guess I remember having parties after shows and drinking, but usually I was in the corner barfing before. I was just, I just could not. I was never really a good drinker. I mean, at any time of my life, really. So, then in college, I went to UCLA. I was a theater major. And at that time, I was in shows again. Like I was just really busy. I would say, type A, perfectionist, overachiever, go, do, and there was a time we had three of us girls in a 2-bedroom apartment, and each of us got to have our own room at one point. And it seemed like whenever one of us had our own room, that was the time when one of us got dumped or something terrible happened. And I remember we drank White Zinfandel, the Moscato of the 80s. So, but I didn't drink a lot, but I think my drinking was always for stress relief. That's what we did, and some social life drinking, but it wasn't until, I'm old, so you don't want to, unless we like speed through the decades, but it really wasn't until my late 30s, early 40s, when I started working full time in a career type of job. I mean, I had my background in theater. I taught acting. I was in LA had an agent, did, auditions and things. And then I met my husband at a church in the San Fernando Valley. And so we went to church, and our whole life kind of revolved around church, so that there wasn't a lot of drinking in our social life. At that time, our church friends didn't drink. And so I taught acting classes, and then his job moved us to Connecticut after we were married a couple of years. And he also had 2 identical twin daughters when I married him. I was 24 and became a stepmom at the ripe old age of 24. And those girls ended up coming to live with us in Connecticut when they were 11. And by then my daughter was 4. And then later on we had Luke. So at a certain point in Connecticut, we had 4 kids. I was kind of a stay-at-home mom, but I worked at the church as a church administrator. And at that time, our life really didn't revolve around alcohol. I think I kind of missed the mommy wine culture, or maybe I was just doing stuff at church and missed it that way. So when I started working in my job, at my career job, and I started working full time, my husband was self-employed. So he took care of the kids after school. And that's really where the stress of the job and raising a family and coming home, I don't know, it just seemed like that's what you did. You drank coffee in the morning and then you came home and drank wine at night. And so I kind of just fell into that. Yeah. And the wine, it works until it doesn't, it did relax me. I remember my husband saying it made me normal because I was always very kind of uptight, overachiever. And it was like, that was like my vacation. That was my way of saying, oh, okay, I can relax now. It was like wine glass in hand, sitting down. That was like the white flag to everyone. That was like, okay, I'm relaxing now. So, and I think I learned early on that, I knew early on that I was drinking more than like the acceptable amount at the time, or the 7 drinks a week or whatever that is. And it bothered me. And I was worried about it, right away. But at the same time, it worked.
Yeah.
It helped. It was part of my social life with my husband at that time. That's how we would connect. And I'm kind of going all the way back in our marriage, because when we would go out to nice dinners or we would go on vacation and we had our time alone is when, we would drink. Usually alcohol was involved. Like, so I was in my late 30s or when I started at my job my current job now. And I don't blame the job at all, of course. It was just, like I said, it was just what we do. And now I look back and I remember there was, I worked for a medical school, and there was a doctor who I worked with in our area. And she used to say about IBS, she's like, that's the working woman's disease, a successful woman's disease, IBS, right? And we should, she would joke around. And now I think like gray area drinking is a successful woman disease. I feel like it's sort of come to that. It's like what we do, it's sort of been sold to us as this cure-all. It's, it helps everything go better. And I certainly bought into that as well. So I right away, so at the time I was getting my MBA because I had this theater degree and I wanted to go into a management position. So I was getting my MBA. I was, working full time. I have a daughter in high school at that time. The older girls had already graduated. My son is younger, so he was in elementary school, and I'm keeping all these plates in the air. And I'm thinking that wine is the thing that's keeping me together. I'd sit down to write a paper at 9 o'clock at night and like have my wine, and that didn't help. What was I thinking? I would just get tired. I thought it helped me be more creative, but I ended up, getting my MBA. And shortly after, I was like, this isn't probably good. So I went to my pastor and I was like, I think, I'm drinking too much. And the response was, well, if you think you have a problem, then you probably do. You should go to AA. And that was devastating. Like, that was not the answer I wanted to hear. It like really freaked me out. And so but I'm a very obedient person to authority figures. So I thought, okay, I remember going to my first meeting and like leaving and like bawling all the way home, like, oh my God, this is, and
Tell me, Susan, tell me about your first meeting. What was it like?
It was a big meeting. It was in a church, they were lovely people. They were lovely people, everyone was very friendly and reached out to me and, like welcoming me into this club that like nobody wants to be a member of. At least I didn't, Yeah. And it was overwhelming, but it wasn't terrible. You know what I mean? The people were lovely. And I looked around and went, okay, it was so funny because after that, I started walking around, just looking around going, they could be in AA. It's like all normal people, you know what I mean? But like, when you haven't been in there, if you haven't been in any meetings, you don't know. And so then I'm like, it just sort of opened me up to like anybody could be somebody who goes to AA, but I didn't, I didn't buy into the fact that I had a disease. I didn't really buy into, I'm doing some worksheets, what am I powerless over? I didn't feel like I was powerless over alcohol or powerless under alcohol. I just felt, but I went for 8 months. I stopped drinking, but at the time when I went to meetings, I would go drive really far to go to faraway meetings. So I hope I would never see anybody I knew. It just really fed into the shame that I already had, a really strong shame base already from my childhood. And I had an eating disorder in high school. I have a thing, and I'm bringing this up only because it did resolve itself with not drinking. I have a thing where I used to pull my hair. It's called Trichotillomania, which I didn't even know what it was until I was 30 years old. But I started this when I was like 13. And it's a body focused repetitive behavior. And I would pull on my hair, and I had like a little bald spot in the back, which since stopping drinking, I do not pull my hair out, and my hair grew back in. I don't have a bald spot. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like that alcohol is sort of a trigger for it. It can exacerbate it, and caffeine too, but I haven't completely given up coffee yet. So, so I went for 8 months. I found some lovely women's meetings. I did not ever feel like their stories were my stories. Like I didn't meet somebody who just drank a little too much white wine on a nightly basis,
Right.
So
back to that very first meeting, and I want to hear more about the whole experience, but like what prompted me to ask in the first place was just that you said you were just bawling on the way home. And so I was curious where that emotion came from. Was it just the stage in the journey, or?
I think it was the shame and like, this is what it's come to, and I totally, oh God, it's bringing up emotion. I totally blame myself. I mean, I totally was like, how did you get to this place, Susan? How could possibly, and it was just, I was just devastated. And then I felt like for the next 8 months that I was only good or if I didn't drink. Like, my life came down to one tiny little pinpoint thing of like, nothing else mattered. And I was only okay or good if I didn't drink. And I didn't necessarily even
I've never heard it expressed that way before, but I'm just having a moment of like the truth of that. Like, it's almost as if all of your worthiness as a human being comes down to this one behavior. Did you or didn't you? Are you or aren't you?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's making me really feel the same way. I mean, and it fed my already, my shame. Yeah, it's a shame inducing. It was a shame inducing experience for me, for sure. And then I had a sponsor, and she was lovely. Like everyone was lovely, and she's like, okay, call me every day. And I was like, I don't even call my mother every day. It was just very bizarre. But then the fact that somebody would give up so much of her life for me, I mean, that in a way was really a beautiful thing, and that's where like coming back around of me being able to give back, it's very meaningful to me. But I went to her after 8 months, and I remember we were going to Vegas to visit one of my husband's daughters, and I was just like, I'm not going. I have a lot of emotions around the girls and everything. And I was just like, I'm not going to Vegas and not drinking. I was like, there's no way I'm making it through this trip with a lot of the other emotional things. And at that time, I was just kind of like, I probably will be fine. I stuck to 2 drinks a day or less. And I did fine. I stuck to my gun, I remember having that first drink and thinking, this doesn't taste good. And this feels toxic. And even waking up the next morning feeling like this, I feel kind of crummy, even after 2 glasses of wine, and, but so I came back and told my sponsor, I think that, I can moderate, but I loved my life. I loved my lifestyle during the week with no alcohol. I just wanted to be able to drink like for special occasions, vacations, special dinners. And she just basically said, well, people who go to AA are people who don't want to drink. and basically kind of kicked me out. And then I just felt,
Oh, wait, that was your sponsor that said that?
yeah, yeah. And so I went, okay. And then I just never went back and felt very cut off and adrift from, at least I had stopped drinking, you know what I mean? And like, okay. And I did really well for a few years actually of just kind of, but I would still overdrink occasionally and then beat myself up. But I kind of just, I didn't know where else to go. So I figured I was just in this by myself, which probably is even more shame inducing as well. Like, okay, now I failed AA. So now, so yeah. So I kind of was just out on my own, felt like I was just out on my own, and I didn't think there were any other options. I didn't really look either. So to be honest with you, this was before your book came out though. This was in 2014. And then in 2015, my husband, was it 2000? Yeah, it was November of 2015. So it was really 2016. My husband and another business partner, we bought this music studio, and it was 10,000 square foot, had a huge stage, had music lesson rooms, had a rehearsal space for bands. And so I would go to work again. So I would work all day, and then I would go to the music studio at night, and I would sub for the vocal teacher and teach voice lessons. Eventually I got a theater group going, and we did some improv classes, and but it was a lot on top of a full-time job. And so that's where my drinking ramped up again, for sure. We got in this habit of being, I'd go to work at 7:30 in the morning to my day job. Then I'd go there straight after work. And then we would go out to like a bar after work, have a couple glasses of wine and some, whatever bar food, and then go home and go to bed and rinse and repeat. And I also wasn't completely on board with buying this. And I was really mad at my husband during this time, and my drinking just ramped up. I mean, and it's a problem when you're like drinking wine in your car before you go into the studio, when you're like, I just need this from between two jobs. And I felt like I needed it to be nicer because I was pissed off all the time. And, but I also felt like I was always sneaking it too. It wasn't like, I was not a party girl. Nobody knew. And people, even people when they find out I don't drink now are kind of like, well, why? That's weird. You didn't have a problem, because it wasn't really something people knew about. And honestly, you can't compare. It was just, I knew it was a problem for me because I didn't take a lot. Like I said, I was a barfer. It didn't really take me a lot to get too drunk. You know what I mean? So, but that's when it ramped back up again. So then but at that point, I just was like, I don't care. I need this to like function. And I was so mad about everything. And I was just really in a dark place, depressed, probably definitely not, our marriage wasn't great. But I still suited up, and show up, get her done, and we did have some great times. We had a band, I was in a band, which is crazy. We did end up doing a show, Lion King Jr. So there were some good things, but it was a lot. It was too much. And so I have a history of doing too much, the MBA, working full-time, kids, drinking, the music studio, working full-time, drinking, and so it's important even now in my alcohol-free life to make sure I am careful with those boundaries of not ending up doing too much, because it's just not good. So, yeah. So in 2019, May 2019, so it'll almost be 3 years, I did run across something that came up on my Facebook. And it was a 21-day program. And I was just like, I just paid and hit, and then like panicked afterwards, like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then I showed up, and it was like the Me Too thing, it was like, oh my gosh, here's some people, these are my stories. They talked about, the bottle breakdown and how can a person actually drink a whole bottle of wine? And it's like, oh yeah, that's how you do it. Yep. And you hear stories and everyone's like, yep, that's my stories. I finally found my people. And so I did the 21 days, and then afterwards, a lot of people were like, I'm going to go 60 days, and I actually did 40 days. But then right after that, we went on vacation. And I was like, okay, I wasn't going to, even my daughter was very supportive. She's like, oh, I won't drink with you on vacation. And I was like, no, it's okay. Because I just still went back to that same old, I wanted to get back to that place, and so we went on vacation. We didn't have any alcohol in the condo. It was only if we went out, but this is where I could really see, and I didn't have any language for it until I did your program, the fixation versus liberation, because it was very much about, okay, well, where are we going? And does it have the wine that I want? And because this was my one opportunity to have my wine, and, and then I was, I felt good because we were getting up. I could see the pattern of how over drinking can happen so easily. You come in from the beach and then you have a glass of wine while you're showering, and then you have another glass of wine, and then you go out. And by the time you go out, you've already had 2 glasses of wine. And then, and then, so that wasn't happening, but it was like, we better get to the restaurant though, so that I can get that glass of wine that I have, allowed. So it very much became about the rules. And then by July 4th, I'd overdrank and then beat myself up, and then did another 30 days. And then I went into August, and my cousin was like, hey, I'm going to do dry August. You want to do it with me? And I was like, oh, I just finished dry July, but I said, okay, I'll do it with you. So then I did August. And then, so I basically could say I was successful at moderating in 2019. Except that I was still in fixation versus liberation. And I would, if I did overdrink, even if it was having 3 glasses when I only told myself I'd have 2 or something like that, I would beat myself up. So I was just I wasn't free, you know what I mean? And then when COVID hit, I just threw it all out the window. I just said, it was very stressful at trying to put the whole medical school curriculum online. Working from home was weird. I couldn't still do we can only drink if we're out rules. And so I just started drinking with my husband again in the backyard. And then it was just like, it's so amazing how you can go from 0 to 60 so fast. And it can go right back to, we're sitting there with 1 bottle. I'm like, okay, you need to go get another one, because this is going to be enough for the 2 of us, and then I woke up. Then we needed to close the music studio. Then we were being sued by the former owners. And the whole time I'm just like, keep pouring, while my husband's telling me all this. And I woke up though, we closed the studio in May. I drank pretty much, when I say I drank through it, I wasn't drinking in the morning while I was working. It was just like when we were closing the music studio, I drank through May. And then at the end of May, I remember being depressed again, really depressed. I woke up in the morning and I just, it was one of, you go to the mirror and you assess the damage or how you feel in the morning, and am I going to beat myself up this morning because of how badly I feel? Like if I woke up in the morning, I didn't feel too bad, then I'd be like, oh, okay, I did it. I drank and I don't feel too bad, or is this going to be
constant evaluation?
Yeah. Every day. And I woke up and I thought, oh, who cares? And then just the thought came to me as I was like, I care. Mm-hmm. Just went, this is my life. I care. And I don't want to feel this way anymore. And then I happened to see your webinar at the end of May. I don't even remember what day it was. I don't remember.
I love that. Just to pause for a minute, man, that whole idea of you caring, and that whole moment, right, of almost giving ourselves permission to care, because we're so conditioned to, well, if it's good enough, looking at these external things. I feel like that's very true for food as well, external cues or external society's opinion about how much we should weigh, or all of these things are so external. Society's opinion about, okay, like even mentioning like, well, I wasn't drinking in the morning. Well, where did that even come from? That idea that it's totally okay to drink at 5 p.m., but not okay to drink at 7 a.m. Like that whole concept has nothing to do with alcohol or drinking. It has everything to do with what society has deemed right or wrong, good or bad. And so for you to at some point just kind of sweep all that away and say, but I care, like that is just, I don't know, it's so powerful. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Well, that was just the start. And then your webinar I saw, and when you started talking about asleep to aware, to awake, to alive, I was probably about half awake then. You know what I mean? I'd done that, I had a lot of times under my belt of doing things without drinking. I didn't drink over Christmas. I didn't drink over Thanksgiving. I would, I had many, many months of 30 days, but then I would kind of go back, and then I would go, no, I was almost like I was putting myself in, and then in March to May was sort of or the end of March to May was sort of like my own pause where I just went, screw it, forget it. I just, didn't care. But then I woke up, I was realizing how bad I felt, right? Compared to the months that I hadn't drank at all. I'd wake up, I felt like crap. I had so much anxiety. I felt depressed. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me that this was probably the alcohol causing this, And when you talked about becoming alive, that's what I wanted. I was like, okay, that's what I want. That is what I want. And that's what I got, from this naked mind. From my husband calls it the naked path. And he keeps asking me, how can he get on the naked path? And I'm like, you are not invited, go away. So I started in June, and what's really a funny story is that on June 10th, we went on vacation. And I was like, oh crap, the foiled again, vacation. So I was determined to go on this vacation and not drink. But it was, I remember standing out on the deck and being like really itchy. My husband's standing there having a beer, and I'm like, I hate you. And I'm like on the deck of this place going, okay, like I'm going to really sit here and not drink wine. I'm like really going to be on this deck and not drink wine. And I went for a walk, I had my, headphones on, and I remember listening to one of your podcasts about, maybe it'll suck, maybe it won't, just, let go of all the expectations. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I can just let go of expectations. What if it's a terrible, if it sucks, it sucks. If it's great, it's great. But I didn't have any expectation of either one. And of course it was great. It was, once I got over that initial hump, and we had such a good time, we laughed so hard. And, my daughter at the time is old enough to drink. So she and her friend who came along had their White Claws, and I had my sparkling water, and, I don't know, the cans, they were both cans. It was like, no big deal. It was not a big deal. And I got through it, and it was a great, and like, I think you've said in other of your teachings online, like you get through that first one, and then it's like, oh, this was great. And then the next one, instead of being a 10, in its hardness, it doesn't go to a 9, it goes down to like a 3. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I could do this, and that was really true. What I wanted to share was the alive content is really where things change. Like I was definitely hell-bent on staying alcohol free for the 100 days, because I started with 100 days. And I had some hard times during that time. My husband's father was in hospice and died. We went out to California from Connecticut. I went out twice. My husband just stayed out there. And it was hard. Everyone was drinking wine, and I was just in the corner doing my mantra mudra. And, but I was so close. And there's so many tactics that I want to tell, people about, who are looking to live an alcohol-free life. And one of them was a days buddy. I call it a days buddy. I don't know. And it was I won't say her name, but E, she knows who she is. And she and I both had the same days. And I had a couple times where it was just really dicey, where I was really, really stressed out and like, I need a drink. I'm not gonna, and then I was like, well, no, I'm not gonna do it. What would I tell E? I want to have the same days as her. Like it helped, to know, I don't know, that just helped to know I wasn't going to let her down. I wasn't going to let me down. and that helped. And then when we had the memorial service, it was at the Hotel del Coronado on, this gorgeous overlooking the beach, all the drinks flowing, and I was not drinking. And that was probably that was the next big event that would put a huge notch in my alcohol-free belt, I would say. That was the one that right after that, I can pretty much go anywhere and go, I could do anything if I could do that. And so I really think, getting through, going and doing these things that we think are going to be the hard things are part of the journey. You know what I mean? They're an important part of the journey.
Yeah, 100%. I love that so much. I was going to say we should skip back to that alive, just for people who don't know what we're talking about. What on the webinar that you're talking about, I showed basically a diagram of a head, and it was split by, underneath the ears was kind of like what I was calling unconscious, and then above the ears was what I was calling conscious. And it was coming from this place of when there's something in our lives that needs to change, at first we're not even aware of it, right? We're just totally asleep to it. That's the first place we start. And we are not conscious of it. We're totally asleep to it. We can't change it because we are not aware of it. So by definition, you cannot change something you're not aware of.
Right.
And then something happens, usually a myriad of things happen, lots of things happen, and all of a sudden we are aware. And for me, this was, I knew something was wrong in my life. I knew that, I was anxious. I knew that, I was basically holding things together, but I was not yet really willing to be like, alcohol is the thing that's wrong. In fact, I actually thought alcohol was the thing that was the solution to all the things. But then enough things happen, enough moments of discomfort where you move from that asleep place where you're unaware and you cannot change it to really awareness. And that's the aware place where it's now conscious.
Right.
Oh my gosh, alcohol is the thing. And that's terrifying. Like that is the most terrifying place because you still can't change it, or you start to try to change it and all your attempts at trying to change it actually prove to you that you can't change it. Right. It's almost this self, because you're not, using, in my opinion, the right methodology, and so we go through that. And it's so painful, that place, but awareness, although it's painful, like and especially if somebody's listening right now and they're feeling like, yeah, that's where I am. I realize alcohol is a problem. I have no idea how to change it. I would just say, take a moment to celebrate because, you cannot change anything that you don't see. And so even in the awareness, you are on the right first step. You're on the path to changing it. And then we move into what we call awake, which is you're still conscious of it. You're still very much in your awareness, but you're actually able to change it. You're actually able to get some traction. You're able to do 40 days. You're able to do 60 days. But the thing is that you are still using conscious willpower in order to make that behavior happen. And one of the things that I find so fascinating about how we as a society have looked at alcohol in general is that we've considered that good enough. It's totally good enough. Like, you're not drinking, Susan, so that's good enough. And like you said earlier, your entire worthiness is actually locked up in that question, am I drinking or am I not? And if you're not, then that's good enough. But nobody is asking, hey, Susan, how do you feel? How is that going for you? And I just, like, it almost makes me sick to my stomach to be like, okay, so what, you're going to use your entire life? And I think about it maybe in a somewhat different way, because I think of the human will. And I think that there's nothing more strong and fragile at the same time. Like if you think of the human will, it is so strong and it's so powerful. And if we violate a human's will, you think of humans owning other humans, or humans, attacking other humans or abusing other humans, like the violation of will, there's nothing that makes us matter, or we just know there's nothing worse, like to the core of our being. Everything inside us as humans knows that is absolutely wrong. And so with willpower, we're almost like trying to overpower our own will, right? Like we're trying to subdue our own will instead of looking at our motivations. Why do we want to do it in the first place? Having grace for ourselves. Like, you are drinking because things are hard and you're doing the best you can with the tools you have. You just might have the wrong tools. No, we're just using this hammer to try to subdue our own will into behaving a certain way. And then, by the way, according to society, if we behave that way, it's all good. But nobody's asking, Susan, how do you feel? And so what you were talking about in that progression to alive, and especially the last 6 months of the path, is that alive content. That is all about going back underneath the conscious line and making that change unconscious. Like, we don't consciously think about, walking or driving to work or tying our shoes, because we've done it so many times. And it takes two things to make that change unconscious. It takes positive emotion. You really have to feel emotion, right? And I know that's really hard to believe that people would actually feel positive emotion about not drinking. And it takes repetition. And when those two things happen, that's where real freedom is. Freedom does not exist, in my opinion. When I was in that stage of using willpower, I was thinking about drinking and spending more time focused on drinking when I wasn't drinking than when I was.
That's how I was all of 2019. Absolutely. Absolutely. That curriculum in the Alive content. Well, that's where I started to feeling better about myself, which actually at first felt weird. Like, I would feel good about myself and feel like, oh no, I shouldn't feel that way. That's kind of conceited. Or it was weird because it was sad to think that I did not ever really feel good about myself unless it was around an accomplishment. And then I wasn't even good about taking, like, when people say, oh, that was really good, I'd be like, oh, no. Like, I wasn't good about taking compliments at all. And I remember just feeling like waking up one day and just feeling good and then going, oh, that's weird. And then I started kind of this, I used I tried all the tools in the 100 days. I did all the work in the Alive content. And and the changes just started happening. I started meditating. I do a little bit of yoga. I'm not great at it, but I do yoga because the breathing and the repetitive movement really helps me get out of my head. What the biggest change, and I really want to share this, that happened, was that it completely changed my relationship with my husband, because I started using the thought work to look at my own thoughts that I had about him, and I had for years about him, and asking that question, is it true? Is that really true? And being able to make a different choice. And at first it was a cognitive thing, just like the process. It was like I had little stickies up on my mirror that said, I love Lance, which just cracks me up because it's like that show, I Love Dick, so every time I would see it, it kind of cracked me up. But I also just was like, I love Lance. Like, I just was telling, like, I do love him. I started questioning all my thoughts about it. I mean, I use this example all the time. Like, hey, where's the can opener? And like, my immediate thought would be like, oh, he doesn't know where the can opener is. That's because he doesn't do anything around here. And then it just snowballed, And then, so I thought, I used this actually in this exact thing. I went, well, could it be true? Is that really true? He's a jerk because he doesn't know where the can opener is. Well, could it be true or truer that maybe Luke my son put the can opener somewhere weird, or to the extreme of, does it even serve me to think he's a jerk because he can't find the can opener? Should I just drop it and just tell him where the can opener is? Like, does that whole thought process even work? You know what I mean? And I just started doing this with a lot of my thoughts, and he was willing to work on, it stage 2. He did the alcohol experiment in October. I said, will you do that? Just so you understand the language about what I'm going through, you understand, and he, after his dad had passed away, he could have used a month off. So, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it, and we have a therapist, and she loves the work that I've been doing. Like, she's just always, she even asked me, what's that program you did again, for another client. And I told her, and so, but it really did change. So it changed my life. I'm the same person. I'm married to the same husband. I have the same house, same job. Everything in my life is externally is exactly the same. And the only thing that's different is that I am completely different in it.
That's so awesome. I feel so similar to that. I mean, I know that content of just noticing our thoughts and questioning our thoughts and asking ourselves, is it true? What am I making it mean? It's so pivotal. It's so transformational because, you can show up in such a different way. And there's so much suffering that happens that you're just causing and you don't know you're causing. It's not your fault. You just have no idea that you're causing your own suffering, right? It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So Susan, I know that you have since become a certified This Naked Mind coach, which is so exciting. And where can people find you?
They can find me at susanlarkincoaching.com. And I still have my full-time job. So I'm doing this as a passion project right now. And I love working with women and helping them just see their worthiness and become alive. That's what I want for anyone who wants that. That's what I'm selling,
I love that.
And because it truly happened for me. And it does make me sad when I see people who are like, oh, I couldn't do that because I don't drink. And I'm like, why could you not? Like, I've been to Napa, I've been to Sonoma, I'm in Key West right now, which I have to say is very boozy. Duval Street is like, yeah. But I even realized, though, that's not a place I would have liked to go even when I was drinking. Like I said, I wasn't the party girl, you know what I mean? And so we've been having a great time here. And pretty much, I order what I want. We go to the store. I bought my, sparkling waters and stuff like that. I mean, you could do anything and everything's fun and wonderful without drinking. Drinking doesn't add anything to except make you feel bad in the morning.
I love that so much. It's so awesome. So let me ask you the question that I ask at the end of these podcasts, which is, if you were able to go back to Susan, who, was kind of over drinking, but keeping it in control. And especially the Susan, I guess, let's go back to the Susan who was crying on the way home from her first AA meeting and just feeling so devastated and hopeless and just beating herself up. What would you tell her about what life is like now? How would you encourage her?
Well, this is what I want to help do, is tell people there's another way, that AA isn't the only way. This is what I would love to get the word out on to pastors and doctors and anyone who's in a position to help a gray area drinker, someone who, just says, hey, I think I'm drinking a little too much, is like, it's not a death sentence. And that learning about how alcohol affects your brain and your body, and really getting this conversation into the wellness conversation, because it really is about wellness. It's about brain wellness. It's about breast wellness. It's for women. It's about, it's just about wellness altogether. And why is it any different than going gluten-free or, dairy-free or all the other things we're free of, alcohol-free, and, really overcoming the stigma. But for that, Susan, I wish that I could have been there to see that there's another way, and there's a positive way. And give her a hug. So, and I want to do that. I want to do that for others. I want to help people see there is another way, and that you don't have to wait till you hit rock bottom. I mean, I don't know that I did hit rock bottom. Or I had a high bottom, or whatever they say. Who cares? You know what I mean? I just decided one day that I didn't want to do this anymore. That wasn't making me feel good about myself. And that if you're at that place, I say alcohol. What did I tell my brother? So we went to Mexico, and this is the first time I told my brother about not drinking, and he was like, so he'd already had a few margaritas. He's like, why the hell would you want to do that? And I'm like, my wife looks at me. But later I said, it's a lifestyle. As we were swimming up to the swim up bar, and he got his beer and I got my alcohol-free pina colada, I said to him, I drink whatever I want, whenever I want. And he goes, oh, good. I can be part of that club. And I'm like, uh-huh. And I said, it's a lifestyle, not a life sentence. That's my little tagline on my email, is that it's at the time when you go to your first, at the time when I went to my first AA meeting and I was driving home crying, it felt like a life sentence.
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
And it's been the best thing that I've ever done. I feel like my confidence has come back, and yeah, I'm starting to like myself a little bit.
That's awesome, Susan. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's such a good one, and I just really appreciate it.
Well, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Are you ready to make instant changes to your drinking? The answer is not in restriction or deprivation, and no, you don't need more self-control. I'm here to tell you that you can break your patterns and habits and finally feel liberated from alcohol. You can return to a life where alcohol is small and irrelevant for you, a non-issue, take it or leave it. In fact, I have 3 secrets to control your drinking, and I'm going to teach them all live in a special 3-day virtual event from March 28th through the 30th. Learn these 3 secrets to control your drinking and make changes instantly live with us. Save your spot today at controlalcohollive.com. I can't wait to see you there. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.